The national income means the value of goods and services produced by the country during a financial year. The net national income is nothing but the opening in terms of your labor capital. If the country is able to generate higher levels of income, automatically there is a growth. Good morning and welcome to the first session in Unit 2 in Business Decision Theory, where we are going to talk about a very important topic called as the national income. Moving further, what does national income mean to you? So, the national income means the value of goods and services produced by the country during a financial year. So, when you look into a country like India, we produce hundreds and thousands of goods in any given point of time. So, what is the value of this goods? There should be a quantitative value, a quantitative meaning to it. So, that's why we talk about this word called as national income, and we are very much concerned about it because it has to be counted on that particular financial year. We are not talking about this goods and services to be continued for many years, but we are concerned about the national income, the income that is produced within that financial year. Now, thus, it is a net result of all economic activities. So, all the economic activities, which includes your trades, which includes your exports, imports, all the factors put together, you will be able to get your national income. Now, national income is an uncertain term. That's very, very important here for us to notify, and it is often interchangeably used with the national dividend output. Why? Because the concept of economics in terms of defining things has still been under confusion. Why? Because people don't understand the terms very clearly. So there is not a very clear-cut definition that can go inside for national income. So there are times when people interchangeably use this national income word with dividend, with output, with trade, or with deficiency, expenditure, and all those factors. So what does national income typically means to us? In a simple way, the value of goods and services that are produced by a country in a given financial year. So at the end of 1 year, so when you come back from to the March to April cycle, at the end of 1 year, whatever goods that are being produced by the country, that is what we are going to calculate altogether. So moving further, the concept of national income. Now the concept of national income, we are going to talk about the factors called as the measurement of national income, where we're going to talk about the consumption, economic growth, and the fluctuation. Now here we are going to talk about what are all the factors that are involved in the concept of national income. Now, when we go through the national income domain or the definition altogether, the national income is a total amount of income accruing to a country from the economic activities in years' time. It includes payments made to all the resources, either in the form of wages, interest, rent, or profits. So let's now try to understand the national income first. The national income is the total income. So it is not a part by part, it's the composite income altogether that is being earned in terms of the economic activities from in the year's time. So typically from the March to April time factor, whatever that has been earned by the country. So that is what we are going to look in terms of the concept. Now what is going to happen here is that it includes payments made to all the resources, either in the form of wages, interest, and the profit. So for a country to work, the first thing is again the land, labor, and capital factor. Without that land, labor, and capital, you will not be able to understand the growth factor, because these are all the factors of payment, factors of income that is going to lead into picture. So wages, how much have we paid? How much have we earned through interest? How much income we have made through the rent factor? And what are all the profits that we have earned because of the trade and business? Putting all these things together, you will be able to get the national income. I want you to pay attention to this word called as accruing, because it is an accumulation process. It is not something that happens overnight, but it is an accumulation process altogether. Followed by the progress of a country can be determined by the growth of national income in the country. So what happens here is that the progress, when I talk about the word progress, it means a step-by-step activity which is determined by the growth of the national income. So more the national income. If the country is able to generate higher levels of income, automatically there is a growth, which means to say that the country is expanding in terms of business, in terms of trade activities. Now let's take the example of India itself. Over the past few years, if you have been able to see the growth of India, let's say starting from 2004, 2005 onwards till the 2019-20, we have been able to see that in the last 15 years, there has been a tremendous growth in the Indian economy. The reason being is that we started opening up our economy to all kind of activities, including the IT services, manufacturing, retail, aviation, insurance. So all sectors have now started getting an equal amount of importance, by which our country is earning a lot of income. Now, what we have also done in the last 5 years is that we have started giving a lot of emphasis in terms of exports, which means the Made in India program and Make in India program is actually trying to push the Indian goods across the globe, which means our trade is growing at a great level. Today, we are able to export our goods to almost all the countries in the world. Similarly, if you start looking at the automobile sector in India, the growth in terms of two-wheelers have been on a tremendous outlook, because we have been able to export our two-wheelers to different Asian countries and also to European countries, where we have started seeing an appreciation for our goods. With that also, the agriculture products exports are also now on the rise. So what we are able to see is that the income for our country is increasing day by day. So that's a very, very good sign of growth for India. Followed by the national income definition. There are two kinds of national income definition. One being the traditional definition, the other being the modern definition. Of course, we are going to learn both the definition. We are going to understand what are these factors altogether. But before that, before we start hitting into the definition, the one thing that I always want you to understand is that when we talk about this word progress, this is something which happens over a period of time and not an instant evaluation. So that is very, very important for all of us to stick to our minds. Why? Because when I say progress, it is not going to happen instantaneously. For India to come up to a level, or rather than to challenge countries like China or UK or Germany or US, all these countries which are highly developed or advanced, it took time, including Japan. Now, what is happening in India is that India is slowly trying to convert itself into a manufacturing hub, which means we are slowly trying to get into the world export zone altogether, and that amount of exports, the income that is going to be accrued over a period of time is going to reflect on the balance sheets of our country. So which means to say that the national income is bound to grow, by which the country will also show the amount of growth process. Recently, there has been a lot of economists trying to predict, saying that India will definitely succeed in getting a double-digit growth in terms of its GDP. So a double-digit growth would be something like quite close to 10.5 to 11% of GDP will happen in the couple of years to come. Now, followed by, let's go with the traditional definition. According to Alfred Marshall, one of the greatest economists of our time, he said that the labor and capital of a country acting on its natural resources produce annually a certain net aggregate of commodities, material and immaterial, including services of all kinds. Let's break down this definition. Try to understand what did the great economist try to tell. What he is trying to say is that the labor and capital of a country. So for a country like India, which has got a very, very diversified workforce, which has got a large number of workforce participating in some kind of economic activity. Now, if you look at agriculture itself, there are a lot of farmers in India, and there are a lot of people who work out of the farm. You take any other sector like automobile sector, manufacturing sector, textile, or you talk about retail, or you talk about FMCG, all these sectors have got n number of people who are working for some wages. So the labor factor combined with the capital factor. What is a capital factor? The investment that is made in that particular sector. Now, for example, if you say that there is going to be 10,000 crores invested in the railways, 10,000 crores invested in the aviation sector. So the labor plus capital together will be able to produce some factor and output altogether. Why? Because the labor and capital of a country will act on its natural resources. The natural resources are people, process, technology, land and other factors, which will produce an annual output altogether, a certain amount of net aggregate of commodities. Because the labor will work on these factors, they will be able to come up with a considerable output, which will be a part of our national income. So this will also include services. Now, once we were talking about manufacturing, with the new economy coming into picture after 91-92, services also started taking a center stage here. So goods plus services are going to be our count in terms of our national income. So that's why he says that including services of all kinds. So all the services put together, it might be a consulting services, it might be a healthcare services, educational services, it might be something related to the non-services like banking, financial services. All these kind of factors put together will constitute our national income. The next part is that this is true that net national income or revenue of the country or the national dividend. Why? Because this is the true factor, this is the true picture of the country. Now, when you read through newspapers or when you read through different factors in life, you will come across so much of information. Why? Because today we are flooded with information. Let me tell you that factor very clearly. We are all flooded with information. Moment you open the newspaper or a social app or a media or anything, you're flooded with information. You keep talking about this information at least 10 times. What happened, why it happened, and there are several news channels who keep on telling you about the current situation in India. They try to tell you some numbers, some figures altogether. What happens here is that people get confused, people have their own assumptions about the national income. But the truth here is that the net national income is nothing but the opening in terms of your labor capital. The output of your labor and capital is the truest form of your national income. So that is what is going to be counted at any given point of time. Followed by the definition is laid down by Marshall being criticized on the following. Why it is being criticized? Of course, what Marshall said was not 100% accepted. So there was a criticism. Why? Because due to the varied categories of goods and services, a correct estimation is very, very difficult. Now, that is one thing which you have to see. When Marshall made this prediction, probably at that time period, services sector was not even identified. There was no tertiary sectors at all. We had only a primary sector called as agriculture and manufacturing. Today we have a primary, secondary and a tertiary services. We are also talking about allied services factor. So now what is happening is the accuracy. The way to measure this national income is becoming more and more difficult. So it cannot be answered in one straight line saying that this is your national income, this is what you need to look. What is happening here is that due to the variation in the categories of business, in the categories of production, what is happening, it's becoming difficult to estimate the national income. Now, moving further, there is a chance of double counting, hence national income cannot be estimated correctly. So there is chance that multiple number of times the same factor would be added again and again and the income keeps growing. So for example, let's say a product runs in supply from producer to distributor, very simple one, to the wholesaler, retailer, and then to the ultimate customer. If on every moment commodity is taken into consideration, then the value of national income increases. But if you understand the cycle chain very clearly, we have a very simple factor in economics where we say producer to the consumer. That's all we need to understand. There is a producer. That producer will produce goods and it will be consumed by a person called as consumer. Now, who are these people? Wholesaler, retailer, or when I talk about distributors, all these people are agents, are a part of the economic cycle. Ultimately, the goods will go from the producer to the ultimate customer. That's what we need to know from an economic standpoint. But in between the link, we have hundreds of people who are a part of this great economic chain. So now what happens at every level, if I start counting the value of the good, the value of the national income will increase. So it will become multiple fold times, it will go up higher. So that is why we discourage Marshall's definition. We say that that might not be true. Why? Because we need to take the count only once, not n number of times. So also the other reason is that there are products which are produced but are not marketed. Now that is also very, very important. Now let's say for example an apple, an orange, a lemon. These are products which are produced, they are not marketed. Nobody makes an advertisement for a lemon or an apple or a carrot or brinjal or tomato. These are all products that are produced by the farmer, sold directly in the market, but then the income is also realized there. So what we try to understand is that there are several factors where the income is not actually recognized and realized. It is only being done on a meticulous, monotonous process altogether. So that's why we feel that Marshall's definition of the national income might not be counted as the true form of definition. It needs a kind of change. It needs a kind of modulation altogether. So moving further, let's try to understand. Now, for example, in agriculture-oriented country like India, there are commodities produced which are taken for self-consumption also. So this is very, very important here. I have a piece of land where I grow food for my family. I might grow for 1 bag of rice or 1 bag of wheat or some vegetables which is for self-consumption. Now, how am I going to record this self-consumption into picture? So that means there is going to be an underestimation of national income, which means there is going to be a chance that there is a severe mistake in terms of estimating the national income. Followed by, now when we are here in detail, we all go into the Simon Kuznets definition where he tries to talk about the net output of commodities and services flowing through the year. Now it is going to, for an entire year, from the country's productive system into the hands of the ultimate customer. Now what does Simon Kuznet try to talk about is that he's talking about the flow from the producer to the consumer. So he's talking about a flow. He is not just bringing into picture where he says that only one short definition. He says that there is a flow in the economy. Now, moving further, with this, I come to the end of this particular session. I hope and believe that all the information that has been shared through this particular session will be of a great help and of a resource to you. In the upcoming session, we will be talking more about the various concepts of national income, which will be of a great use both in terms of practical as well as the theoretical output. But until then, stay tuned. Stay blessed and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me on this wonderful session today.